Sansa realized that her hands were shaking when she landed in the courtyard. 1,000 faces were looking back at her, pale ovals sketched with fear and shaded with grief, and all Sansa could feel at that moment was sheer fury. "There is no peace," she announced, and there was a near-silent murmur of confusion laced with panic at it. "The council shall meet in 10 minutes, Sansa added, and then stalked into the keep. "We knew we had nothing to negotiate with," Sansa began tiredly, once everyone had settled into their seats. "It was just a stalling technique, in all truth, the parley. But the Kingslayer did offer us some terms that aren't as horrendous as expected." "He says that he won't touch us," Alice said tonelessly. "If we open the gates tonight, that is." Adara stared at the grain of the table. "Are those terms so bad?" "They're the best we'll get," said Willa. "If we stall?" Winifred began. "For what purpose?" Arya asked derisively. "To make them angrier? To have them take back the terms that they've already given?" "For an army," Winifred countered heatedly. Sansa shook her head minutely and held up a hand before Arya could retort. "We cannot stand still and let them enter. So we won't." "No," she said. "There's no army coming. The Carhold's closest, and even then it'll take a fortnight for a single rider. An army will take even longer. The Dreadfort's closer, I know, but they've turned their allegiance. We can't depend on them. And the food stores are enough for only 3 weeks. With 2 things we can do right now. We can open the gates and allow them in. Whether we do it now or in 3 weeks, it matters little." She straightened and looked each woman in the eye. "Or we can fight." "Fight?" Will asked. "With what men?" "We have 500 women," Sansa said, and it was level. It was as straight-edged, cutting as a sword's blade. "We have horses. We have the largest amount of steel in the north, according to Moore's Umber. I know that it is easy to bow our heads and bend the knee and look away, but I tell you this, we Starks don't turn our faces. The men of the north are honorable, and we are their daughters, their sisters, their soon-to-be wives. Tell me why we can't lift steel in our own defense." "None of us know how," said Winifred. "It's not that difficult," Arya replied. "Think of it as a pointy stick, you know, and you've got more experience than most women already." Sansa struggled not to roll her eyes. Then she breathed deep and said quietly, "I'm not going to ask you to fight if you don't want to. If enough of you want to, more than half, we'll open the gates and let them in. I'll do it. But I think we can. I think it's possible. I think there's something that we can achieve, something great, right here. But it's only possible if we're brave enough to reach out and take it." Arya frowned, looking over her with glittering eyes. Abruptly, she jerked her chair back and rose to her feet. "I say we fight," she said. Adara got up slowly. "We can't," she said. 100 trained men against us? We're girls, all of us. We can't. Open the gates." "I say we fight," said Willa fiercely as she stood. "We Manderleys have flown Stark banners for 1,000 years. We won't falter here." Gerald nodded. "If we open the gates, we're nothing more than glorified prisoners, no matter how safe the Lannisters claim we'll be. No, I say we fight." "To what end?" Winifred asked softly. "We risk everything that we have in the hopes that we can train women to bear steel? Open the gates." Willa looked stunned at Winifred's words. She turned a dark pink that clashed horrendously with her green hair. Before she could shout, though, Mira rose to her feet. "I can teach them to defend themselves," she said. "And we're strong, each of us, in our own ways. We'll fight, I say, and we'll fight well." They waited for Alice to speak. She was the last, but she didn't. She only stared at the table for a long time before slowly looking up at Sansa. "Had you not spoken, the bastard would have taken us prisoner," she said. "And who knows what would have happened then? The Kingslayer didn't expect you." Alice looked around her, and her lips twitched. "You should have seen it," she told the others. She was wonderful. She was as courteous as a blade, and nearly made the Kingslayer bleed with it. Her eyes swung back to Sansa. He thought you a shrinking southern violet. He still thinks all of us as foolish and meek as his sister and her ladies. But we're northerners, born and bred, and that blood runs true. For 16 years, everyone's told me to stay silent, to watch and wait, to be nothing more than a warm body for some strange man once I've flowered. Not a one's told me to stand up for myself. Alice nodded once decisively. Put a sword in my hands, princess, and I'll help lead the army myself. 7 women ranged in front of her, each as different from the other as possible. But they stood, and they stood tall, and Sansa could do nothing more than match that courage. She rose to her feet. Then we fight, she said. We shall fight, and we shall do our inheritance justice. She pressed against the table, both palms flat against the rough wooden grain. Get some rest. We begin training on the morrow. Lyra's horse dropped when she was just out of the wolfswood. She belted her sword to her waist, patted it on the neck, tugged her hood tighter, and began to run. 2 days later, she stepped into Winterfell's courtyard. It took her a few moments to enter the keep, and then she was in the great hall. A man was at the head table, and she could see Arya in the lines of his face. Lord Stark. I've arrived. Swiftly, she moved forward, approaching the table. When she was only a few feet away, she stepped out of the shadows and threw back her hood. She unsheathed her sword, ignoring the sudden hush at bared steel in the great hall, and knelt. When she looked up, Lord Stark was frowning heavily. There was no recognition in his face. My name is Lyra Mormont, she said hoarsely. I am the daughter of Lady Maege, sister to Daisy, and your daughters have sent me here, my lord. He got up. My daughters? They are at last hearth, Lady Lyra. They are. There is news, she said. News I would tell you first, my lord, before telling others. I beg of you, do you have a council that you must call? I'd rather tell it to all whom I must once. Aye, he said, and Lyra let herself be led to a small room a few corridors away. When all the lords were assembled, he said, Tell us, Lady Lyra, what news from last hearth? A force of Lannisters, she said. 100 men led by the Kingslayer march on the keep. Princess Arya was out riding when she saw them, and so returned and told us what she saw. Impossible, a lord said. You think villagers wouldn't have spread rumors of their march? And even if that wasn't true, the keep will hold. 200 men stayed there as protection, said another. Lyra firmed her jaw. Her princesses, her sisters, her friends, they depended on her surety. They depended on her to save them. They wore northern armor, she explained stiffly, and the men were out hunting. The keep held only women and children when the Lannisters came. How are Sansa and Arya? Lord Stark asked, eyes cold enough to make Lyra shiver. Alive, she replied. As far as I know. As soon as Princess Arya rode in with the news, I left. I apologize, my lord, I know nothing more. You rode south immediately? I found the men, Lyra said. Those from the keep. Princess Sansa gave me letters pressed with her official seal, ordering them not to return. She recognized that the men were too few to retake the valley, and so told them not to lose their lives needlessly. Instead, she had them head to separate keeps and ask for assistance. But after that, yes, I rode south to Winterfell. One of them glared at her. Where's your horse? I drove it too hard, she answered. Well, I hope it isn't dead, but we parted ways right before I left the Wolfswood. And ran the rest of the way here? Yes, she snapped. I ran for 2 days and 3 nights, and right now I'm on my feet only because I've 2 sisters in that bloody castle that need me to save them. So listen to me and hear what I'm saying. There's a force of Lannisters at last hearth, And if your daughters aren't dead already, they are prisoners, and I'm not sure which fate is worse. Listen to me, you bloody overgrown fools. I'll get down on my knees if I have to. But do something, because I don't think I can bear to look at my mother and tell her where Jory and Lyanna are. We are the women of the North, Sansa said in a hall packed with shaking, terrified people. We are stars and bears and lizards and wolves. We are steel. We will not open the gates to the faithless Lannisters quietly. We will not bend the knee bloodlessly. We will not surrender. Our men carry steel at their waists and on their backs. Tell me, why can we not do the same? Do you think Bran's driven father crazy yet? Robb asked. Jon smiled lazily. They were drunk, both of them, or not quite tipsy, perhaps. On the verge of becoming drunk, but not there yet. If he hasn't, then Summer would have, he said. Robb laughed. Imagine father telling that big white thing to heel like a hound. Summer'll as easily listen to your father as he would to Bran, Jon told him. But if Shaggy Dog were there... We'd return to a half-mad Lord of Winterfell, Robb finished. Exactly. They settled into a nice silence, the ale blurring the lines of the tent into faint gold. It was broken by the Lady Catelyn, who looked between them disapprovingly but didn't say anything when she entered. She only handed Robb a letter and said, "It's from Winterfell." "Did you read it yet?" Robb asked. His tone was much different from before, an attempt to sound older than he actually was, Jon thought, but it didn't actually succeed. He looked slightly ridiculous when he puffed his chest out like that. "No," she said. "It just arrived." "What does it say?" Robb rolled his eyes and took the letter, unrolling it. A moment later, all levity faded from his face. By the time he was halfway through, his hands were trembling. When he finished, he was as white as a sheet. "Robb?" Jon asked slowly, a pit building in his gut. "What happened?" "Read," he said, tossing the letter to him. "Gods above, I did this. Jon bent over the letter. When he finished, he knew he wasn't much better than Robb. "They hold them," he whispered. "Aye," said Robb. Tears, bright and blinding, stood out in his eyes. "I'm leaving tonight," Jon said. "And doing what?" Robb asked. "You'll need an army to take Last Hearth. And you won't be able to, anyway. They have Arya. They have Rickon. They have Sansa." "What are you going to do, Jon?" "I'm going to start negotiating," Jon snapped back. "It's what we'll have to do, eventually, right?" Robb inhaled, exhaled, set his shoulders, and said no. Jon surged to his feet. It was a chair that saved Robb a broken nose, a chair between them, hampering his movements enough to allow some measure of calm into his head. And then Lady Catelyn stepped between them, eyes hard. "Don't be ridiculous, Robb," she said. "He has to go. If you want any sort of control over your army, you have to stay here. And Jon," she turned to him, "you'll go, but you won't go alone. Take 20 men with you. Use them as negotiation pieces, if you must. I'm sure there are enough young men here, enough men whose sisters and daughters are there, and that keep they'll want to accompany you." "I don't want 20 men." "You'll take them," Robb said suddenly. "And you'll go north, and you'll do your best, do you understand?" Jon felt cold, bitter bile rise down his throat. "I'll save them," he said roughly. "I'll try, gods above. I love them too, Robb." "I know that." He sighed and looked grief-stricken, looked exhausted, looked young. "I know that, Jon. But I'm the one who removed them from Winterfell's safety. I caused this, and I don't know if I could bear their deaths. My sisters! My youngest brother! In the gods be damned Kingslayer's hands." "You didn't cause this," Lady Catelyn said at the same time as Jon's, "This isn't your fault." "I'll find those who betrayed us, and I'll kill them myself," Robb whispered, stepping around his mother and embracing Jon. "And you, find those Lannisters and kill them all." "That's an order from your king, all right?" "Aye," said Jon, and pressed his forehead to Robb's shoulder, let himself dissolve into entire, body-shaking shudders. They didn't sleep. 3 weeks they had enough food for 3 weeks. Sansa was determined to make good use of it. The women, 500 of them, were divided into groups. All were given basic field dressing guidance. All were trained for at least a week on wielding swords taught by Arya or Mira. The children were given simple chores, and the older ones, led by Lyanna, helped in distributing the food and water and clothes. Sansa and her council didn't sleep. Arya and Mira were almost continuously training the women, and when they weren't, they were going over battle strategy with Sansa, Jarell, Alice, and Willa. Ediri and Winifred had taken over the healing sessions, and they all assisted each other where they could. Sansa read old historical records of wildling attacks on the castle and the strategies used to repel them. She dusted off tomes on geography to see if there were secret places that could be used. She yawned and stretched and snapped, and every step of the way, there were 7 other women beside her. As the days passed, they saw a battle plan emerge. It was pockmarked, scarred, shaky, but it was something, and it was built out of nothing but their own hard work. There was something to be proud of in it. "To the men I take," Jon announced, "I will not pause for you. Your horse throws a shoe, we leave you behind. You sleep late, we leave you behind. You whine at all, we tie you up and leave you behind. Do I make myself clear?" The men nodded. "Good," he said flatly. "We leave at dawn." Arya dragged Sansa out of the solar when 2 weeks had passed and Sansa had still not gone for a single training session. "I know you don't like swords," she told her, "but you'll be leading at least some women when we attack, and you'll need some knowledge. Plus, it's your own fault for convincing us to fight." "It isn't that," Sansa said, but Arya spoke over her. "Now we'll begin with how to hold a sword." "Give me one," Sansa interrupted. Arya sent her a look. "It might look easy, Sansa, but it really isn't. You need to know how to hold one properly." "I know," Sansa said. "Now, give me a sword, Arya." She rolled her eyes and then picked up one from the pile at her feet, stepping forward and slapping it into Sansa's hand. Sansa hefted it easily. Wooden swords were weighted similarly to steel ones, but there was something inherently easier on the wrist with them. She raised an eyebrow at her sister. "I might have told you that I know how to hold a sword if you'd asked," she said archly. "I asked Robb to teach me a long time ago." "No, I don't have your skill, because gods, it had been a long time since she last actually sparred or bore steel, but I am better than most anyone who doesn't have practice. Likely the only people who best me here are you, Jarell, and Mira." Arya looked at her, evaluating, and then grinned. "Come at me." "What now?" "Yes," she said, raising her own practice sword. "Now." It was a blur of gray stone and wood. Sansa met Arya's first 2 strikes and let her greater height bear down on Arya for a brief moment before seeing the flicker across the corner of her eye. She spun away, her sword coming up instinctively, but Arya wrapped her sword across Sansa's knuckles instead of the blade, and Sansa dropped her sword, nursing the stinging bruises. The clatter of the sword on the ground opened up her field of view, and Sansa became aware of the small crowd gathered around to watch their fight. "You're not bad," said Arya, and while it wasn't admiring or anywhere near soft, it was warm, and it made Sansa grin back at her, suddenly unabashed, suddenly proud. "We've got 5 more days of food," Jarell said quietly. The Lannisters had spent 2 weeks drinking, carousing, and having the feast they knew those inside the keep couldn't afford. They could hear the music and rough laughter through the night. There should be rain soon, according to all the predictions. Sansa swallowed hard. And we're as ready as we'll get. As soon as the weather turns, we'll attack. Their plans were simple, as they needed to be. But first and foremost, it depended on Arya's bravery and her ability to sneak, and for that, she needed to look unremarkable. She needed to look like a boy. Sansa had hated to ask it of her, but Arya was fairly vibrating with excitement for this part. When Jarrell had offered to cut her hair, Sansa had insisted on doing it herself. Those who pass the judgment swing the sword. In this case, a knife. Arya's dark hair decorated the floor of her room. Sansa styled it to look as boyish as possible, all long, lanky strands that framed her pale, long face. When Arya slipped into a set of breeches and a jerkin, she looked remarkably unlike herself. Head down and chin up, Sansa told her firmly. Shaggy Dog and Nymeria are going to accompany you. We'll start riding out in an hour. Once you've taken care of the horses, you know what to do, don't you? Send Shaggy Dog back and hide, Arya recited. And then I know what I have to do after that. I'll take care of myself, don't worry, Sansa. You're the most important person here, Sansa said. We need you to do this. I wish I didn't have to ask my younger sister to kill people, but... When I told Jon that I'd killed a man, he told me that this isn't an easy world to live in. Arya scuffed a toe against the stone. But it's what we have, and nobody's going to be angry for defending ourselves. She breathed deep. I know you don't want me to do it, but I'm the best in this entire keep, so I'm going. Sansa hugged Arya tightly. I know, she whispered. I'm so afraid, Arya, and I'm so tired of being afraid, but I know you can do it. I never doubted it. You be safe too, Arya ordered, voice muffled into the weave of Sansa's gown. You have to do battle, Sansa, and you have to live. All right? You be safe. I'll try just as hard as you, Sansa said, leaning back and pressing a finger under Arya's chin, lifting it to meet her gaze. There was a promise, and a hope, and a fear, all melting together like dye in a tanner's workshop. Sansa, a month ago, might have wept at the tension. But now she had spent 3 weeks leading a castle of 500 people, inspiring and talking and fighting. Sansa was grimmer now, and older, and wiser. She only pressed her lips to Arya's forehead, as gently as she could. After a few moments, once Arya was putting the finishing touches on her costume, she spoke. Did you talk to Rickon? Sansa sighed. Yes. He's not happy. The night before, he'd pitched a fit loud enough to be heard halfway across the keep, all because Sansa had finally told him that she and Arya would be attacking the Lannisters soon. It had only gotten worse when Sansa asked if he'd let Shaggy Dog go with him. He'd wanted to come with him. He'd refused to let them risk their lives and keep him safe. Arya had been the one to calm him down. Sansa wasn't sure what exactly Arya had told him, but he'd been subdued throughout the night. Even if he was sullen and moody when Sansa approached him, it was at least better than screaming and wearing at the nerves of the already jumpy population. He'll be fine, Arya said and finished belting Needle at her waist. He better be, Sansa said with a wan smile. I can't handle him on top of everything else. Now, come on, we have to meet everyone else in the Solar. On the way, Arya grumbled, I don't see the point of this meeting. Think of it as a pep talk, Sansa replied. At Arya's scoff, she added, you might not need one, but I'm sure there are some others that do. I'm sure, Arya said dryly, and then they entered the Solar. The rest of the council was there when they arrived, all 6 other women. Girls, Sansa thought, and felt prickling fear run down her spine. We are just girls. Not a one of us has seen her 20th name day. All of you know what we're going to do soon, Sansa said, taking her place at the head of the table. Arya flanked her. Once we step out of this room, we are the leaders of this castle, the battle commanders. But we are not just that, and, well, I just want you to know, all of you, that if the Lannisters were to come like this, I'm glad that I'm fighting them beside you. There are none other that I would ask for. We couldn't have done this without each other. Jarrell smiled. And I'll tell you this, Princess Sansa, none of us would be here without you. We'd opened the gates and bent the knee to a Lannister bastard, said Willa. Or we'd watched 200 of our own men get slaughtered for no reason. We've died, perhaps, or been raped. And we still might do all those things. I won't say it's impossible, but at least we didn't do it quietly. I can say I've pride in my choices, and that's not something I ever expected. Alice looked at Sansa intently. If I am to die today, I'm glad it's beside all of you. She swallowed. I am glad to do so in the name of the North, yes, but also in the name of Sansa Stark. I'd wish all of you to live, Sansa said softly. I'd want all of you beside me, not dead. So would we, said Mira, a lopsided smirk affixed to her face. But you asked us to fight, Princess, and we answered you. We'll fight to live, too, but we'll fight for you first. You chose to fight. Accept it, and let all those who underestimate you learn to regret it. Thank you, Sansa said. Thank you, all of you. I know this isn't what you wanted. We aren't fighting for anything other than life, and you know this. We aren't fighting for honor, not like our men. But it's what we have, and... Arya's hand dug into Sansa's shoulder, squeezing hard enough to make her pause. You're wrong, she said very seriously, under her brown-black fringe. We do fight for honor, Sansa. Maybe not with honor, but for our own. And there's nothing lesser in that. Sansa looked at her little sister, younger by 2 years and so much older than her years suggested. We are growing, she thought, and it was just as sad as when Robb accepted his crown. It was just as proud. So we fight, Sansa said, looking at each of them in turn, memorizing them as they were, all lamplit lovely. Any man might have only seen their beauty and named them empty-headed, but Sansa knew the way Alice narrowed her eyes when she concentrated, the way Willa dyed her hair green and honed her tongue like it was a sword, the way Winifred hid in her sister's shadow and used the darkness to take note of secrets, the way Jarrell bore steel with ease and hated using it every moment, the way Mira laughed at things others flinched at and was still as kind as Winifred at her gentlest, the way Eddira's hands tightened on each other when Nen on each other, when Nen on herself, when Nen near laughed, when Nen on each other, when Nen, if she'd never say anything, the way Arya bared her teeth and burned twice as bright as anyone else. If this is to be my only battle, she thought, I am proud to say I fought it beside all of you. Thank you, she repeated and smiled as softly as she knew how, because Sansa was the courteous, genteel daughter of Lady Catelyn. And then, because that was not all she was, she added, Now, let's go out there and break an army, all right? When the valley turned misty with impending rain, Arya snuck out with Nymeria and Shaggy, Dog. There were 3 sentries in the camp, and in the hours before dawn, she slit their throats quietly. The direwolves dragged their bodies away before they could be discovered. Nymeria returned quickly, but Shaggy Dog was gone to find the rest of the army. Then she went to the paddock, a temporary wooden enclosure the Lannisters had built to keep the horses together. A few well-placed torches, a nicely cut-down fence, and some judicious application of whistles ensured the horses stampeded towards the camp instead of away. The men were drunk or sleeping off the drink. They had no chance. Arya ran a slightly shaking hand down Nymeria's back and lowered her head, drew needle and moved towards the big red tent emblazoned with lions rampant. Your turn, Sansa, she thought. The geography surrounding the keep was, at first glance, highly undesirable, particularly in their situation. But they'd built a strategy that was as dependent upon that terrain as possible. The valley sloped upwards, ending in Last Hearth itself. The reason why the Lannister men only covered one part of the valley was that there was nowhere to go in the opposite direction. It all emptied into the same basin in the end, anyway. But that meant there were separate entrances, not the main gates, which were closely watched, but smaller ones set into the sides. And these weren't watched half as closely because they all ended up in the same place. It was a waste of resources. These entrances were what they used. A major force, led by Sansa, Willa, and Mira, came through one. They were to await Shaggy Dog and then start marching. By the time they arrived at the camp, the released horses would have hopefully calmed enough. Their women could finish off those who hadn't been killed already. And a smaller force led by Jarell and Alice circled further around the valley, serving essentially as a sponge to absorb those who attempted to flee in that direction. When Shaggy Dog came loping out of the fog, all big and black, muzzle sticky with blood, Sansa thought she might be sick from the fear, from the anticipation. She breathed deep, drew her sword, and nodded to the two flanking her. "We are Northerners," she thought, and started to move forward. "Stay safe," thought Jon. "Stay alive. I'm coming."